Hey guys, in this video I'll be discussing the second Moist Von Lipwig novel, Making Money, which is of course a Discworld novel. So, the quick spoiler-free review is that this book is really, really good, still one of the best Discworld books, but is a slight step down in quality from going postal, the first book. So, it's kind of spoiler-free, the characters are still good, plot is good, the vibe in the world is still all there, but it just feels like a slight downgrade in terms of probably the plot. The plot and some of the new characters just don't really stand up as well as the characters from the original, from the first book. So whilst, say, the first book was to me like an 8.5 out of 10, this book more comes in at like a 7.5 out of 10. Still a fantastic book, but it's sort of missing some of that punch and pizzazz that the first book really had. So yeah, that's the spoiler-free review done. So, you know, spoilers from here on out. So, I really liked the stuff that I liked from the first book is still there. So I really like the character of Moist Von Lipwig. I find him really interesting. I like the character of Veterinary. Veterinary is always great. Everything he's in. It's cool to see his relationship with what's his name? His wife, who I forget her name now, which is but I forget her name. But yeah, his wife. Seeing that relationship develop. Adorable, their heart, right? So that's cool. The characters are still there. The world is still good. You know, obviously it's still Ankh-Morpork and Ankh-Morpork, a really interesting city. Really cool vibe. Discworld's obviously a really cool setting. And I just really enjoy. I just feel whenever I read an Ankh-Morpork story or Ankh-Morpork story, I just feel really sucked in and involved in the world. And I really can like visualize it and a very visceral understanding of what the city is like. You know, it's like it's dirty and it's grimy, but it's got so much personality and so much stuff going on. And the city itself feels like a character. You know, and because it's got such personality, you know, he's always talking about how like citizens of Ankh-Morpork, you always want to see a show and stuff, and so you really get this like there's just various like sort of stereotypes you build up in your head of the city, and so you really do feel involved in that way. So the characters are good, the setting is good, the plot is not as good. So basically, the plot of this one is that he takes over a bank, he gets left, and so he meets this old lady, right, on the behest of Lord Veterinary, and then she dies and leaves him the bank, and then he's got to like, you know, sort of get the bank working in the same manner as he had to get the post office working in the first book, right? The only thing is, though, that it's not quite as well done, I don't think. And I couldn't necessarily put my finger for you on why, but it does just feel like the stakes are maybe a bit lower, and he's not really doing changing as much. The bank was already like a working bank, it's kind of functioning, so he's not really like doing that much. The main sort of thrust of this book is, I guess, is sort of going from a gold standard to not the gold standard, right? But honestly, it's not really the most compelling of stories. In fact, I would say that the plot on this one is like sort of like a 5 out of 10 maybe, just because the story that's going on. And then it's like another sort of sub-story with this dude, Cosmo Lavish, who thinks he's Lord Veterinary, and it's like sort of a subplot, but it's a very, very subplot. And then there's a subplot to that one where this dude from Moist Von Lipwig's old life, called Cribbins, is trying to like blackmail him and stuff. And it's just like the subplots, you know, start to get a bit. So, you know, the Cribbins thing, for example, feels a bit boring and doesn't really feel like there's much stakes because you know it's not really going to, Cribbins' plan isn't really going to work. Same thing with Cosmo Lavish, doesn't really feel like a compelling sort of villain because he's just so incompetent. And then the main sort of plot, I guess, is him like rejuvenating the bank. And it's not really, because like I said, the bank is still sort of a functioning bank anyway, right? So what is he really doing? And then also there's another subplot of these like dudes in a basement, and Igor, and then just some random dude who are like working on this like money machine, like an economic model, which is literally a machine. And that's like, it's interesting, but once again, it doesn't really go anywhere. And then there's another subplot of like his wife Adorable getting back these golems. And so all of these subplots sort of come together, and they do form like there's stuff going on in this book, things are happening, they do form like a little amalgamation sort of plot, but I hope I'm getting across the impression that there's not a ton going on here plot-wise. With that said, though, I feel like I've been talking a bunch of shit about this book for the last 2 minutes, but I really want to say that I love this book. Like, it's still really good. It's still 7.5 out of 10. Fantastic book. Really, really interesting. And I think the reason for that is that even though the plot I felt like was a bit, I've been discussing it. The plot's a bit sort of inane, and it's also very variant. There's lots of different subplots and stuff, and they don't necessarily all meet up at the end. But even with all of that, I still really love this book, and I think the reason why is because it's just got that sort of Terry Pratchett vibe. It's funny. So there's a lot of comedy in this book. Moist Von Lipwig is just a funny guy, and there's just a regular sort of Terry Pratchett jokes. I mean, if you've ever read a Terry Pratchett book, you sort of understand the sort of humor he has in it, and it's funny, and it mostly 99.9% of it lands and is interesting. And then, like I said, the setting of Ankh-Morpork is just so compelling. And every now and again, we see Vimes, for example, who I'm a massive City Watch fan. So it's just seeing vibes and stuff is fun. So you really do feel like, even though maybe this book's plot isn't like really popping off necessarily, you do feel like you're so deep in you're engaged in the Discworld, you're engaged in the vibe, that so you don't necessarily care too much that the plot's like not fantastic. And the same thing with the same point I just made about the setting is also true of the characters. I love Moist Von Lipwig as a character so much that I actually don't really care what he's doing, to be honest. He doesn't really need to be doing anything. I'd read a short story about Moist Von Lipwig going for a stroll, you know? Just because if you combine Terry Pratchett's prose and interesting tone and comedy, right? If you combine that with Moist Von Lipwig as an interesting character and personality, and you put those together, right? Then I would literally read Terry Pratchett writing a story about Moist Von Lipwig going for a stroll, because I'm confident that the prose and the character together would just kind of create some sort of fun thing going on, you know, probably run into someone walking their dog and like scam some money off them or something, right? And so that even the most, so I guess the point I'm trying to get across here is that even if the plot isn't really going anywhere, the quality of everything else is so high that it is still a fantastic story. So yeah, no, I really, really enjoyed it overall, and yeah, I'd just say it's a slight downgrade from the first one. And if I remember correctly, I'll be reviewing Raising Steam next. And if I remember correctly, Raising Steam is the best one, so that's exciting to get to. Just like a couple of like quick sort of, so that's like the review kind of done. Just a couple of quick discussion-y notes here for me at the end is that I found it really interesting that the like Lord Vetinari, so basically what happens is they get these 1,000 golems, right, and then the golems come to the city, and then this guy, the dude with the economic model, was like, no, we can't use these golems because it would like break the economy of the city. Which is an interesting idea, and there's some evidence to suggest that in ancient Rome, they had lots of slaves, and this stagnated the economy because nobody wanted to work, so everyone was like sort of on the grain dole, so to speak. So everyone was on the dole and no one was working, right? And it slowed down Rome's economic productivity. And there's some pretty compelling evidence to say that that's true. So what Lord Vetinari is convinced of is that like if we use these golems to work, right, to replace everyone as workers, and there won't be any work in the economic system will slow down. And so therefore he's okay with Moist Von Lipwig burying them in the ground. So that's like an interesting idea, but I'm not actually so sure how much I agree with that, because they don't necessarily, they could do extra work. So for example, and I'm no economist, I'm just throwing some ideas around, but from my perspective, surely a golem doesn't necessarily need to steal your job as a baker, but if he builds a bridge for you to get to your bakery faster, then he's not taking a job from anyone, he's just created something good and useful for you to use, right? And therefore you can get to your bakery faster and make even more money and have more leisure time. So I feel like I don't really agree with Pratchett's perspective on the golem thing, in terms of like whether the golems would be useful or not. This book also has a weird focus on this gold standard thing. I'm not sure like and I understand I'm sounding a bit negative here. Please don't take this as a negative. I love Terry Pratchett, love him to bits, but I'm not sure if he has a problem with the gold standard, like what if the gold standard hurt him or something. But a big moral running through the story is that the gold standard is bad, and if you believe in the gold standard, you're a fool, and money should be sort of floating or based on something else, and that the banks and cities can support themselves and don't need a gold standard. And I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that. I don't really have a perspective on it at all, because I'm not economically inclined in that way. But it is just weird that it's like a pervasive theme through the story that this told through his character of Mr. Bent, who like believes that we have to have a gold standard, and then over and over again he's shown to be wrong, and the movie ends with, the book ends with him turning out to be wrong. And at the gold standard, and you don't need the gold standard, and he was wrong, and he admits he was wrong. And it's like, it's just a weird sort of like thing to choose to show in your story. But I guess, Terry Pratchett's a weird guy, and I mean that in the best possible way. So, if he wants to talk about the gold standard and why it's bad, I mean, more power to him. It just struck me as a little bit odd. But yeah, overall, I really like, just a quick summary if you're still here after my inane babbling about the gold standard. Not that anyone watches these videos. But yeah, so if you're still here, just a quick summary. Good characters, great setting, great vibes. Like the book feels good, it's written well, but the plot is a little bit flawed and doesn't really come together, and it sort of brings it down in my estimation. So it's maybe 1 out of 10 less good than the previous book in the series. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.